A Vlog második részében Douglas Hyde-dal beszélgetünk, aki egy Ausztráliából származó, de Pereden élő barátom. So Douglas, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And please introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, and maybe in 1 minute tell me your whole life. How did you get in here?
How do I get here? Okay, so yeah, my name is Douglas Hyde. I'm from Sydney, Australia. From a beach called Bondi. Grew up there, and I found myself heading to Europe about 15 years ago, living in London, working, and met a beautiful girl. And she told me she was from Slovakia, and I wasn't sure where that was.
So you found the map?
Yeah, and she took me to Bratislava, and I thought, oh, well, a small city. And then she said, oh, no, we're not there yet. And yeah, but I love it.
How many years ago was that?
The first visit was about 14 years ago, but I've been living here now for about 9 years. So.
And you also settled down. You got 3 kids.
Yeah.
And you're teaching at a local high school.
Yeah, things like that. We wanting to settle some roots down for the kids to grow up, and plus this country is fantastic for having young families. So
well, I remember when I first went to London, it was a cultural shock for me. So I believe you had the same when you came here. Tell me about it.
A lot to observe. I spent a lot of time in the garden, which I had never done before. And like I said, I grew up in the middle of a city, so there were gardens only with grass and a small bit of seating area, right? Yeah, and so growing, and what the first thing I noticed about living here was the contrast of life and death, and it is ever present every day, and it really brings a sense of morality, and it's it really does. It sets the tone for the cultural footsteps, the foundations, I should say.
So does this place remind you like Australia in the 80s or 90s?
No, 90s definitely. I have that feeling. I have that feeling of Australia in the 90s. But I believe that's to do more with demographics rather than culture and economics. But the feeling I have is that this place has potential to be something great, right? So I'm forever optimist. So there's always room to improve.
So how optimistic are you now after the election night?
Okay, well, again, I think there is a big challenge ahead to the coalition, to form another coalition. I'm not skeptical. I'm hopeful, but I am interested in what can be made of this. They ran really a big campaign, a big agenda of anti-corruption, and so did a lot of other parties. And but I think they've just been blowing that trumpet for a little bit longer. But I'm hopeful. It's a bit Mission Impossible. There's a lot of big names, big egos involved. So I'm hopeful. I hopefully they can see what the people of this country want.
So people obviously want to change, and you're teaching at the local high school. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about the kids, about the students? Have you ever talked with them about politics or such?
Of course. And I think it was good that there was a presidential election as well last year. It really set the tone of what needs to be talked about. So they were ready. They were really ready to come out in numbers. A lot of them were really quite shocked by the fact that a coalition that they were really hoping to get in there didn't. And I think that did shock a lot of people. But generally, the person they wanted to win won, or got majority. So They're hungry. They're young. There's still. I teach.
How much do they know about politics? I mean, do they only perceive politics through Facebook and through advertising or such, or do they know about the exact policies?
Okay.
What are parties proposing to?
Well, okay. Yes, much more interested in policies. 5 years ago, in the same school, I was seeing something completely different. And as one of my students explained to me, she said that she feels her generation are handcuffed to the perspective, to the opinion of the last generation, and they have to believe in what their parents and grandparents were talking about.
You mean like they felt some kind of pushing from their parents?
Oh yeah, politics was only spoken about at home. They weren't talking about it in the classrooms like they are now. Today, those handcuffs are off. The people, even in 5 years, I'm seeing such a big difference between that.
What do you think? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Great, great thing.
Because politics is also about values, and it's. I think that it's natural that the parents are trying to give their kids their values.
No. I completely agree with what you're saying in the sense that it is about values, but good values come from multiple different, your customs, your culture, your religions. Many different things can bring good values. Politics was usually what I found in the past, 5 years, was I vote for this, you should too. Right, and that was how people were kind of accepting.
So there were no arguments, just
no, exactly. And I think the idea is that a lot of young people are now willing to challenge that older view. They're less afraid. This Gen Z, they're going to rip up the old rule book and they're going to bring their own. This is how I feel with that generation.
I kind of feel disconnected to Gen Z, and now I feel like they don't really understand the Gen Y, and we also don't understand them. Obviously, the technology is playing a huge role in their life, so to be honest, I'm a bit afraid.
I wouldn't be. I honestly, I work with them, I teach them, I'm part of their life daily. So my perspective is that baby boomers, the people born just after World War II up to the 60s, they wrote the rules. They set the expectations of what business was going to be, of many things. And the next generation, these Generation X, ticked all the boxes, succeeded in all. They were the first ones to really achieve in a lot of things. They set the rules in business again. They're creating the technology that we're now all using. Y came along and were the users for me. They were the ones that absorbed all of this. They were the early adopters, the influencers now. They're really the consequences of the rules that were made back in the past. But Gen Z have come along. They've got technology since birth, and they're really absorbing a lot of information. And this is probably the biggest negative about that generation. They're really absorbing a lot of information. They're challenging at 13, 14. They're challenging my opinion, and that's not scary. That's good and healthy, as long as they understand that there are multiple opinions and things out there. But I wouldn't be scared. I'm more. I think if we don't guide them in the right way, and I think if Y don't offer some kind of good values themselves, if they don't offer a good guide to the Z and to Alpha, the next one, they will be lost. They will be completely disconnected.
So you're obviously doing your job great because they love you, and and they are listening to you. So that's why you're having such a close connection with them.
I think that the education system has been set up by, again, an older ideology, and therefore they're getting tired, they're getting stressed. Things are changing in the school system. I think that the form of control, which I think it's a bit controversial, but I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by that kind of comment, that the form of control is getting tiresome. I think they're looking to be more motivated, not with fear, but with hope. And I think that comes from a lot of the content they're absorbing, and that growth of Netflix, for example, and YouTube, and coming from America, and now again with the Chinese apps like TikTok. Yeah. They're seeing something different, and they want to be a part of that. And yeah.
So in a private conversation we had before this show was, you already told me about how these kids are getting Americanized.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, that's why I get along with them, because this is exactly what happened. So quick background story. Australia during World War II were calling on British help. The Japanese were bombing Darwin, and there were subs in the Sydney Harbour, for example, and we called Britain. That was what we did. That's what we always did. But they couldn't help. They were broke, no money. But the Americans were quick to come, and we set up free trade agreements. We've always had this really strong partnership with America, and one of the things that they offered was their TV. So my parents' generation grew up with a lot of British television, as still available, but the American television came in through in the 80s, and this is what I know I look young.
So it just felt like you're in the US?
No, but you suddenly got a feeling of that Americanism,
like culturally.
Yeah, like language changed. And Britain saw it too. Britain saw it too. Not may I have a coffee, it's can I get a coffee? These kind of Americanisms in the language changed, and I think what we're seeing now is they're watching shows from the perception of America and Britain, and they're comfortable with that now. Gen Z are really comfortable with that, which makes me comfortable because I can relate to that too. But I can see also by living here how it's a clash of the culture that they might have been brought up in, or what grandparents experienced,
So I see in the corporate sector a massive downgrade of the language because of these Americanisms. How do you feel about this language change in the school?
Rap music. There's merch, this merch. They love kind of wearing labels of catchphrases and things. It's not new, but it's coming here. And there's Slovak ones. And there's a lot of merch. And then the other day I saw an English one, and without, I'm sure you know it, and I don't want to like promote it, but it's like F them, And I got so shocked thinking, these obviously bought this overseas, and I found out that it's a Slovak group.
Yeah, one of my friends went to the European Parliament in a shirt like F you effing F.
Yeah, and they're less, the swearing is less offensive when you use it in English, so it's a lot more common. But it's not just the language. It's I think their understanding of how things work in the Western, like in Western countries, Westernized countries, I should say. I'm not afraid of it, but I definitely believe that more cultural events could be taking place. here.
So how many years have you spent in the education system?
Well, I've been teaching for 9 years. 9 years, 2011.
So let's say you have been promoted to be the minister of the education.
Right.
What would be your policies? What would you change?
Number
in the
one,
system?
okay, so I would stop the state schools competing with each other. That'd be the first. I would. They're all chasing a monetary reward for a positional value, and that means that
like more kids,
more kids, more money. Definitely, that's how they're living. But
that's the same with the unis.
Yes, exactly. Now, what happens is once but it's all based on results. So when when you bring back good grades, you suddenly can get more money. Each school can receive a bit more money. And once you get a bit more money, you can improve equipment, you can improve not teachers, but teaching equipment as well. And you can encourage and attract more of the better students. And I'm not...
Small schools getting worse, big schools getting better.
Well, bigger schools are now limiting numbers of entries. I think at the moment the bilingual school in Nitra is accepting 30 students, but 200 or so are trying to get in. And then the people who don't get in have to find somewhere to go. But they're taking the cream, the top, right? They're taking the top. And that's not saying that that's a problem, but now you've got one leader who's going to constantly stay on top. And
so there's no challenge between...
Well, the focus then becomes on student grades, teachers, techniques. They're pushing the teachers to improve the grades, which means that they're putting all the stress onto the student, and the grades matter. So the 3 weeks that you might study something is the system at the moment means that nothing actually is tested until the end of that 3 weeks. So you could stay quiet that whole 3 weeks in your class, and then suddenly you get a test, you copy some notes, and then you do the test out of memory because you've just memorized it as much as you can, and you've put it back down. If you pass, you pass. Everything that you didn't understand will never get retaught. So you've lost that. Plus the stuff you just forget gets lost. Move on, keep moving, and then it focuses on just standardized testing and this system.
All right, what else would you change?
I would change that system. I would change, instead of 3 weeks of note taking, reading, trying to get the student to absorb the information, then test it at the end. I would remove away from that lexicon system, and I would put more practicing soft skills. Research classes, getting them to, from a really young age, to know the difference between good quality source of information and bad. I would then get them to learn how to present this information to a group, be challenged with questions. Then I would get them all to kind of collaborate, work really well together, collaborate to then, expand that information. And then again, more presentation, and then the test, or, and so on. And this can all just, I would need to sit around with some very, very smart people to be able to kind of piece that. But this is the opinion of just me. Yeah. And
one of my problems is that you get out the whole system, or you get out from school and you have no clue how is the real world working.
Yeah.
So you have no clue how to be an entrepreneur. You have no clue how our tax is working. how is the judiciary system working, and stuff like that. So I would love to change that, definitely, and also maybe bring more practice.
Yeah, and this is what I've heard. This is what I've heard. The hairdresser. It's about vocation, so it's about getting 1 week of school, 1 week of prac, and that's what we did in Australia. We had work experience, so 2 weeks we had to spend in different businesses just to get a feel of something different. And I remember one of my choices was working as a fireman at the Sydney airport. And I watched these guys, I was with them for a week. It was exciting, it was different. I was 16 years old. So you got placed next to them, you were part of the group, they really accepted you. And unfortunately, thank goodness there were no fires during that week. So they ended my week by setting a bin on fire so I could get it out. But that really opened my mind to what could be available.
All right, final question, and we will end this for today. How do you feel about men in education system? How many men are working in your school? Because I noticed that in the local ones and in several other ones, 99% it's just women.
Yeah, that's what it is at the moment here. I'm myself teaching conversational English, which when I started was treated as a novelty in a sense. I felt that people weren't taking it too seriously. There are one headmaster and two guys teaching PE, physical education, and that's the typical course for the men. I do know in some of the primary schools locally there are a few men in the English departments, so there's that. But I don't think about gender when I think of the teaching. I think about what we were talking about, what I was talking before about coming outside of the box and entering into something that's different. For example, we're not paying teachers enough or we're not making teaching an attractive profession for men, because men traditionally are the breadwinners, and therefore you tell a man to earn X amount of money and only, he has to put in the hours, and it's not just the hours at school. I mean, this has been discussed and talked about, researched for it. The amount of hours that teachers have to do outside of the school hours is incredible. And I know that it sounds like they get lots of holidays and things, but they're working during these times too. I think it's about attracting people from different professions to enter into the education system, to give students a really fresh perspective. So if they're not going to offer pracs, get people in to bring the prac to them, like in the theoretical way.
So I remember when I was a kid, some of our male teachers were like role models. And nowadays kids don't have this opportunity to have kind of different perspective on things, because men always have different perspectives than women. I'm just saying that it's healthy to have both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I always look at about the fact that men can they can basically separate the things that are going on in their life, and we but this is emotional. This is about an emotional response, and this is not talking about the majority. There, in some cases, women are more skillful at multitasking, for example, than men, I've found. But the idea of disconnection of emotions can help be beneficial for if a lot of men were attracted to teaching. They wouldn't need. For example, I get angry or I get upset, and I don't try to add that to the classroom. I don't bring that to the classroom. They don't need to feel threatened or fearing when I walk in, because I want it to be a fun, interesting environment. That has to be, because as you will probably remember, you enjoyed the topics and the subjects that were really interesting and fun, were made fun by the teacher. And if the school system is stressing teachers, you're going to bring that stress into the classroom. And if students don't perform, then they're blamed as well, right? So I'm not saying this is happening where I'm at. I'm just saying that in a lot of cases, this is the case. Is it a female thing to a male thing? I don't know. But, you know, it would be good to test it out.
All right. Doug, thank you very much for coming here and discuss your ideas. And we can already tell that this show is going to be made on a regular basis.
Great.
So I hope next time we will discuss some more politics and some more actual stuff.
And I can't wait to ask you a few questions too.
All right. See you then.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, Bye.
Take care.
Cheers.